So the region for this wine is McLaren Vale. The variety is Shiraz. Shiraz is probably the most important variety in McLaren Vale still. Of course, Grenache gaining more and more favour in that part of the world. The producer of the wine isn't actually on the front of the label, and there's a reason for that. But the producer is a guy called Steven Pannell. He is kind of one of Australia's sort of foremost winemakers, I guess, sort of a bit of a godfather of the modern Australian drinking in some ways, a mentor to a lot of people from his days back working for a large company, Hardy's. But Koomilya is essentially the wine that tells his story. When he was a 15-year-old boy, Steve jumped off the Bustleton Pier over in Western Australia and came across a bell. The bell's on the back label. The bell came from a ship called S.S. Koomilya. It was a ship that carried hardwood from Western Australia over to Adelaide, which kind of mimics Steve's journey through life, because he started off as the son of Bill Pannell, the founders of Moss Wood in Margaret River, one of Australia's most famous Cabernet producers from over there, and ended up over in McLaren Vale, as I said, working for Hardy, so one of the big companies. But even when he was there, he was one of these people that would have been constantly asking questions about the way that they do things. Someone who really believes in not doing things to a formula, to really finding the right path that expresses something. And actually one of those rare winemakers that always talks about wine like he loves it. Drinks really broadly, widely, deeply, from all over the place, and really expresses that love of wine and that curiosity all the time. And as I say, Koomilya really is the wine that is the expressive rather of that journey. So the vineyard is in, as I said, McLaren Vale. It's an old property that was established in the late 1800s, planted a little bit later. Most of the grapes of this wine were planted back in the 70s, but then grafted to Shiraz, some of them in the 90s and some from slightly later plantings. And the name, before I forget to say, means woman in the Port Lincoln Aboriginal dialect. And the place is right on the fringe of the forest there, real snuggled into native bushland. And it was a place that he came across when he was working at Hardy's. Basically a place that when he saw the vineyard, he fell in love with it. It's a really evocative, really, I suppose, to use a pretty facile phrase, Australian vista down there by the ocean in McLaren Vale. And he, I suppose, dreamed one day that would be a place where he would make his own wine. And in the end, he did. He started his label back in the early 2000s under S.C.Pannell, based in McLaren Vale. And a little bit later, this is in around 2013-14, bought Cellarhand down there and ended up buying this vineyard that he fell in love with all those years ago. And this wine is a wine that harks back to kind of an older way of making Shiraz, as he says, without any of the artifact of modern winemaking, just really getting back to what it is to express land and then express just the local culture. And an important note there as well is Steve makes a wine called Syrah, which sounds like a bit of an affectation, but but his cool climate version of this wine comes from, or of this grape variety, comes from Adelaide Hills. He actually won a Jimmy Watson trophy, the most prestigious trophy in Australian wine, for his 2013 wine from there, which is a very different beast from this. Up there, you've got a little bit more peppery character, a little bit more bright, crunchy fruit. Here, you've got a little bit more depth and earthiness from a more traditional, older way of making wine. So no new oak here. We're talking wine made in a fairly wild, old-fashioned, gentle way to really express the depth of place. And I mentioned how Steve's name isn't on, or his label S.C.Pannell isn't on the front of the wine. That's because it is all about Koomilya, that journey from the boy, 15-year-old, jumping off the jetty in Western Australia, coming to find his home in McLaren Vale, and really doing everything he can to give you in the bottle what that place is. It's a wine that's dark fruited, it's got depth, it's got earthiness, and it should probably live forever, but pretty good drinking now too. And that's it.